Hello everyone, this is your whole group reading lesson for Tuesday, March 7th. What we are going to be doing today is we are going to be reading a story and then doing this written response question right here. What is the main idea of the text? Use two key details from the text to support your response. I'm going to be modeling this for you today. Remember that throughout this video you can pause it to think about anything, discuss anything, and resume it at any point. I know that a main idea is what a text is mostly about. So while I'm reading, and as great readers should always be doing, we're going to be pausing, asking ourselves questions, engaging in the text, making annotations, and thinking, what is this really about? What is the big idea? And I want to be able to state it in a concise way. So I'm going to go to the text that we're going to be reading today. Rip. Thanks, George. When I look at this text, throughout it as I'm previewing, I'm seeing photographs. I'm also kind of scanning it and I'm seeing words about Velcro. So I'm thinking this is going to be an informational text. So I know in an informational text, I'm going to be getting information. And that information is going to be about a topic. And there's usually a point of view by the author, something they think about this topic. So as I'm reading, I'm going to be looking for those key details. I'm going to read this text. You're in your Ready book on 290. Please follow along. Have a pencil or a pen to make annotations. I'm not going to be making annotations in the book. I still have not figured out how to annotate while I'm talking yet. But you can do that as I'm talking out loud, or if you find out anything else that is important, please go ahead and annotate. So paragraph 1. Rip. That familiar sound is what we hear when we undo our shoes or open our backpacks. It's Velcro. One side is fuzzy, the other side is prickly. It sort of feels like a prickly plant. Well, that's because a prickly plant was the inspiration for Velcro. So it sounds to me like, yes, we are learning about Velcro. That's the topic. And it sounds like plants somehow have to do with it. They're an inspiration, which means it was an idea for it. Paragraph 2. George Mestral, the man who invented Velcro, lived in a country in Europe called Switzerland. One day he was hiking in the Jura Mountains near his home. When he came home, he found a lot of sticky burrs on his pants and socks. What makes these stick, he wondered. He decided to look at them under a microscope. Close up, George saw that each little spike on the burrs ended in a hook. When he looked at the fibers of his pants and socks, he noticed that there were little loops. The hooks from the burrs got caught on the little loops. That got George thinking, these things have some real sticking power. Imagine if they could stick to things in a useful way. So it sounds to me like right here in paragraph 3, and perhaps I want to make an annotation, that the idea for Velcro came from these burrs, came from these plants when he looked at them. Paragraph 4. After many years of experimenting, George was able to recreate the sticking power of the little burrs. He made two pieces of fabric, one piece that was covered in prickly hooks, the other covered in soft, fuzzy loops. Put them together and they hung on tight. With a hearty tug, rip, they came apart. George was eager to share his invention. A lot of people told him that it was silly. George knew better. He knew that his invention would take the place of many fasteners. Zippers, buttons, pins, and shoelaces were all becoming a thing of the past, he claimed. In 1951, he patented his invention. He named it Velcro, a combination of the word velour, velvet, and crochet, hook. He began manufacturing it, sure it would have thousands of uses. He was right. Don't pause. Right now, this sentence really sounds like an opinion statement to me. He began manufacturing it, sure it would have thousands of uses. He was right. Well, maybe let me clarify that. Not necessarily an opinion statement. If Velcro has 1,000 uses, and it sounds like it's very important at this point. That's what I'm thinking right now. So not an opinion statement, but it sounds like the author is writing this in there to emphasize the fact that Velcro is important because it has so many uses. Paragraph 6. Velcro's first big fan was NASA. Astronauts had lots of bulky equipment to put on and take off. Velcro proved to be a strong, easy pull-off fastener for spacesuits. It could hold tools in place so they wouldn't float away. Skiers also wore bulky suits. They liked how Velcro fasteners held tight and opened easily. Sneaker makers saw Velcro straps as kid-friendly. Even toddlers could fasten and unfasten straps. You know what, guys? I can relate to this. I have a toddler, and his shoes are Velcro. And I see lots of other younger kids with Velcro shoes because tying shoelaces is hard. So this does make sense. Velcro is very handy and useful, especially for those little kids. It makes life easier. Last paragraph. From something most people find annoying, George Mestral gave us wonderful convenience. The next time you hear that rip, thank him. let's think about what this was mostly about. I know the topic of this was Velcro. I know that we learned about how Velcro was invented in the beginning, because I was saying maybe we should make an annotation up here about the plants. And then later we paused down here in paragraph 5 and we talked about how it was saying how important Velcro was because it had many uses. I'm going to put this together and come up with a main idea. And you know what? I think this whole text, I'm going to pause and I want you to think about what the main idea is, and then you can resume the video. This whole idea, I think, is about the fact that Velcro was invented and how it's useful. So I think that's what we're getting throughout this text. The main idea has to do with us learning about how Velcro was invented and why it's so useful. So let's take what we just discussed and put it in our written response. We're working on the race strategy. So let me go ahead and fix this for you. I know the first thing I want to do is I want to respond to this in a complete sentence. I want to restate the question. So the question is, what is the main idea of the text? So I'm going to restate it by saying, the main idea of the text. I want to make sure I indent. And now I'm going to actually answer it. This is the A in race, the answer. The main idea of this text is the explanation of how Velcro was invented and why it is useful. I'm going to go ahead and fix my spelling of Velcro. So right now I'm going to reread what I wrote, and I'm going to see, do I restate the question and do I answer it? What is the main idea of the text? The main idea of the text is the explanation of how Velcro was invented and why it is useful. So it's kind of two parts. How it's invented, why it's useful. Now I need to go into the C's of race. And there's always two C's because we're going to always cite two pieces of evidence. So I need to now go back to my text and I need to prove why I think the main idea was the explanation of how Velcro was invented and why it is useful. Let's go back to our text. I want to take a look here at paragraph 4. I want to prove that in this text we are learning about how Velcro was invented and why it's useful. In paragraph 4, I think it's a good example of the explanation of how it was invented. It says, after many years of experimenting, George was able to recreate the sticking power of the little burrs. He made 2 pieces of fabric, one piece covered in prickly hooks, the other covered in soft fuzzy loops. I'm going to just focus on this first sentence. After many years of experimenting, George was able to recreate the sticking power of the little burrs. I think that's a very strong piece of evidence. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to my written response and I'm going to say, in paragraph 4, the text says, and this is where I'm going to use my evidence. I'm not just going to say paragraph 4. I have to actually explain it. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to see what it says. After many years of experimenting, George was able to recreate the sticking power of the little burrs. Okay, so now I went ahead and I typed in my sentence from the text. This piece of evidence right here explains, this is what we learned about in the text, that how the process of how Velcro was invented, because this sentence talks about the beginning of that process, how he was experimenting and he tried to recreate the sticking. Now I also need to prove that it was about Velcro being useful. I'm going to go back and find an evidence about how I knew it was about Velcro being useful. Let's look at paragraph 6. Velcro's first big fan was NASA. Astronauts had lots of bulky equipment to put on and take off. Velcro proved to be a strong, easy pull-off fastener for spacesuits. It could hold tools in place so they wouldn't float away. Skiers also wore bulky suits. They liked how Velcro fasteners held tight and opened easily. So here's a lot of really important things about proving how useful Velcro is. It names a few things. It names astronauts, it names skiers, it names toddlers. So any of these key details I can use to prove that Velcro is useful. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the sentence right here. Velcro proved to be a strong, easy pull-off fastener for spacesuits. So in paragraph 6, it states, that's just a way of describing what was said. Let me look where I had. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask. Velcro proved to be a strong, easy to pull off fastener for space suits. All right, so what I did is now I have 2 pieces of evidence. Let's go reread what I wrote. The main idea of the text is the explanation of how Velcro was invented and why it is useful. In paragraph 4, the text says, after many years of experimenting, George was able to recreate the sticking power of the little burrs. In paragraph 6, it states, Velcro proved to be strong, easy to pull off fastener for spacesuits. Now I'm going to go to my E, the explanation. This is what I call the drop the mic moment to prove that you're right. I'm not going to push this, but it's definitely great if you want to experiment it. This is how I just sum up that I'm absolutely right and you can't argue with me anymore. This evidence proves that throughout this text, we learned about how Velcro was created and how useful it can be to many different people. Done. So this is a good example of what a written response should be looking like. I restated the question, I answered it, I have 2 pieces of evidence, and then I sum it up at the end. This is not, the main idea is Velcro paragraph 2. That is not a complete answer. So this is what you're going to be focusing on this week. You will have a question you are going to do now by yourself in Google Classroom, and you're going to follow this format. If you need help, go back to the video or send me an email. Have a good day, guys.